Okay, welcome to Reality Bytes Radio on the 10th of November 2014. I always get confused with the dates on this computer because the months and the days are the different way around. Yeah, 10th of November. My guest tonight is Thomas Sheridan, and I believe we're going to be talking about serial killers. Thomas, are you there?
I am indeed, Neil. Good to talk to you again.
And you. Okay, serial killers, I suppose a general kind of roundup as to why you're interested in them, for a start.
Well, what got me interested in serial killers first, prior to the Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, well, I remember when the Yorkshire Ripper was kind of out and about, and as you say, on the prowl, the media was just, that was what was on the news every night of the week, without fail. There was something about it. He's still not been caught. There's a possible attack here. There's this, that, the next thing, and basically the streets up in Yorkshire were deserted. All the ladies of the night, if you like, and just ordinary women would be off the streets by dark. And as you say, it's a kind of psychological warfare on the public, making them scared.
There's a echo, Neil.
Yeah, we're having a bit of trouble with the stream. We're just going to cut it off and go to a piece of music and bring you back in, Thomas, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Bytes Radio after a brief pause, resetting the system. I'm getting a bit of an echo now, but I'll live with that. Yeah, Thomas was talking there about Peter Sutcliffe. And I was quite young at the time, and I remember it vividly, being all over the TV and radio, newspapers. You couldn't do anything. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting some technical assistance there. Yeah, the Peter Sutcliffe. I mean, there were so many artist impressions as well came out. I know you were saying, Thomas, about the husbands who were turning up late after a night out, and their wives were suspecting them of being the Yorkshire Ripper. But there were so many descriptions of this guy. It was going to be impossible to find them because they were looking for too many people, basically. I don't know what your thoughts on that were.
Well, they were looking for too many people because I believe there was more than one person.
Right. Okay.
If you start to look into these things, you often now.
I can never quite understand why they described how these crimes were done. It's like any crime. Oh, so and so broke into somewhere using such and such a wrench, blah blah blah, and as you say, they talked about the murder weapon that was used. And why would they even talk about that? You know, it
wrecks the police investigation. You know, and they do this all the time.
Yeah, I do remember at the time of the Sutcliffe murders, we even got a description of the type of woman he was likely to murder on that night, and all kind of things. That on average, he'll murder somebody, over a period of time. It'll be, as you say, it'll be tonight or tomorrow or whatever. I mean, if they said tonight, tomorrow, or the next day, you got 3 days where people just stayed off the streets. You know, if they had blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever description they wanted to hand out for that week, and I mean, I don't know. I never really thought much about it at the time, but I do remember it. So it clearly, it's in your mind at some point. They put it in there.
And these kinds of
yeah, I mean, I mentioned to you earlier that we were actually making a documentary about the Madeleine McCann thing, and I'm not sure quite when that's going to be out, but we do have some of the original investigating officers involved in it in Portugal, so that should be quite interesting. Yeah, as you say, the high profile that's been given to that case in itself should make people stand back and think, because I mean, I remember as a child, I'm sure it was the same for you, Thomas, in Ireland. I mean, we were out till all hours. There was none of this stuff going on, and normally later than you were supposed to. But so what? There was no big deal about it. It was not, your mum and dad weren't saying to you, "Oh, there's bad men out there who'll take you away and murder you and all this kind of stuff." There was none of that. It was just, you've got school tomorrow, you should be home. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nothing like there is today.
Well, it's all engineered, the whole thing, and even.
Yeah, that's funny. I read something out a couple of weeks ago from America, where the ACLU were protesting about the amount of surveillance on the street, and then in the same breath, in a different article, they were saying that hey, it's fine. Paedophiles have the right to live in your street and all this kind of thing, And
Yeah.
you know, you think, well, what are these guys at? You know, they're complaining on one case about surveillance, so they don't want surveillance, and they want paedophiles on the streets in your community, but they don't want you to know about it. You know, and they're not going to be watched either. But again, it's they could be anywhere kind of thing. You know, so
Yeah, well, a lot of that's the gaslighting thing, the whole thing of gas.
yeah, something that struck me as well was you see all these serial killers, whether they're in America or the UK or whatever, and they're always writing letters. Do you think those letters are genuine, or do you think that's something else that's put out as a psyop?
I think in most cases well, I think it's
Well, I suppose the longer they stayed out there, the longer the experiment went on. In terms
precisely.
of how far they could push the public into whatever corner they wanted to push them into. Um, in terms of, well, after the Ripper was supposedly caught, I mean, it still went on in the media, you know, what they were doing in prison and you know all the rest of it, and then we had you know, the Fred West thing as well, and
Yeah.
that was another one, but that was the guy in your backyard kind of thing, you know, this could be the guy next door, you know, you better have a look over the fence and see if he's digging holes in the garden kind of thing, and you know, what's he doing at night? You know, it kind of got people spying on their neighbours, if you like.
Well, another thing.
Well, I mean, the only thing that gets me, I mean, the obvious thing about the McCanns is nobody ever charged them with neglect for leaving
Yeah.
their children on their own. I mean, that speaks volumes. I mean, if that was you or I, left 3 children, very young children, on their own in a foreign country in a hotel with the door open, well, you know, I mean, you'd be prosecuted for it, without a doubt.
Without a
You know,
doubt. And what also caused the British Home Office.
well, exactly. I mean, the Portuguese police would deal with it, and that'd be the end of it.
Yeah.
If they wanted to go to the British Embassy, they're fully entitled to do that, of course. But at the end of the day, you know, it comes down to the Portuguese police. And as I say, the lads down in London are making a documentary about this, and they've got a few of those police officers, and I believe the senior investigating officer who resigned as well is taking part in that. So that might be quite interesting when it comes out. I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about something before that. In terms of, okay, we've heard of Son of Sam and the other names you mentioned there, Fred West, Peter Sutcliffe, Saville, to whatever degree he was involved. But I mean, when you say that these people are looked at to see what connections they've got, are there, to your knowledge, any killers out there who have not been brought forward because of their connections, or you know, serial killers who were just as bad as Sutcliffe or that we've never heard of in the media? Because, as I say, they
Yeah.
might have connections.
Well, the Manson.
Yeah. So basically, once they find out that it is, for example, the son of a cabinet minister, then they have to go looking for a scapegoat to take the blame for it. Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
exactly. Yeah, or they'll have a.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that takes us back to Jimmy Savile. I mean, if you know, obviously they've investigated this case and they've come up with the Yorkshire Ripper, you know, catchphrase kind of thing. And it makes you wonder if Savile was actually a lot more involved than Peter Sutcliffe was. Who knows?
Well, yeah. Well, if you look at the evidence, it delivers from.
Well, I mean, on that evidence alone, he should have been arrested for the what's it called? The term for it, perverting the course of justice.
Yeah,
Because
but he was.
if he had information, he should have passed it over, and some of these people might have still been alive.
Well, he was untouchable, and everything. Oh, yeah, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, that famous clip from the BBC with John Lydon, of course, back in 1978, I think it was, or 79, where he was asked who he'd want to kill, you know, and he said Jimmy Savile. He's up to all sorts of things, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then it turns out that you know, John Lydon's written in his book that's just come out that he was in the House of Parliament before he was even heard of, before the Sex Pistols were even heard of. So what was his connection?
it's incredible, isn't it? It's hard. It's just. It's.
Yeah, I mean, we can only find out for ourselves, and you know, we all go down various paths, depending on your interests. But as you say, it is an illusion. You think you know, you've got to the truth somewhere, and then something else pops up, and you think, well, what was that about? You know, I mean, the case of John Lydon, I mean, it's pretty minor, but you know, he's supposed to be put up there as the epitome of anti-establishmentism, if you like, and then you find out in he's quite happy to admit that he was in the House of Parliament before he was even.
How did he even get into? You know,
Oh,
it's just
exactly.
everything is just makes no sense.
Yeah, I saw something earlier in the week in the media, and Vivian Westwood's still going around. You know, she's touting all this stuff about feminism and all the rest of it, and you know, she was well known to John Lydon, McLaren, and all them, so she was in that circle as well. So were they in Parliament as well? I mean, we have no idea who's been in and out those doors, and what kind of shenanigans have been arranged, if you like. You know, here you go, Johnny. We'll make you notorious. We'll make you this and that. You know, he's still touring the world and still making a lot of money.
Yeah, well, we assume that's true. We don't know for real. Like we don't know for certain. But I mean, I haven't read the new coming out with.
No, I just read the article in the media, and he's
yeah, I'd want to read the
out.
whole book. They can quote things out of there. You know, like before I was. You know, before I was doing this scene, I was like, you know, I was hired in the Houses of Bureaucrats in the Irish Parliament in front of government ministers. That could be easy, you know, on behalf of the group I was working for. That could easily be turned around to say that I was a government agent. You know, so we have to really look at these things.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Lydon was an agent of any type. I'm just like, how does
it's a strange anomaly. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it begs the question: who else was in there? Who else was going in the doors of Parliament for whatever reasons, before or even after they were famous? But I don't know. It's kind of you know, you like to think that you're kind of woken up if you like, and then, you know, I'm not saying John Lydon was a hero of mine or anything, but you think, you know, how deep does it go when you see people like that, who you would imagine would be kind of revolting against that kind of thing, or supposedly were, and you hear about, and you think, well, as you say, what's real? How many layers of the onion are there?
Millions. And it's not, and the onion goes out, in, sideways, and it's like you know, black is white, upside, you know, down is up, left is right. You just don't know. It's we're totally being messed with.
Yeah, certainly, to a large degree. Thomas, I'm going to call a halt because our stream keeps going on and off and on and off, and I keep on to restart and lose my train of thought.
I need to get a glass of water.
Okay, I suppose what have I got? I've got Talking Heads and Psycho Killer. How about that?
That's great. Yeah, I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, cheers. Okay, that was Talking Heads and Psycho Killer. Talking Heads. I saw Talking Heads once many years ago, and of course Mr. Byrne is an Edinburgher like myself originally. But Thomas, you still with us?
I am indeed.
Okay, we mentioned paedophile scares and you know, serial killer scares, and the one that came to mind was the Marc Dutroux case in Belgium, and I'm not quite sure. I can't remember the chronological order of the story, but it ended with, I think it was up to 1 million people on the streets in Brussels protesting because they'd found out, or they'd been told, that government ministers and everything were involved in that case, and Marc Dutroux was somehow connected to people in government. But that's, I mean, it was all almost an opposite kind of psyops kind of thing, because the people got out in the street and then nothing happened.
Nothing happened, and it made international news as well, and nothing happened.
Yeah. So I mean, what in that kind of case, I mean, what kind of power do people have at all to do anything if the government just says, oh well, you know, we've dealt with it, that's it, nothing to do with us anymore? But that was the last lot that were in.
They'll always find a small patsy, the totem to sacrifice. I believe that's what that Sutcliffe was. I don't believe for a minute Sutcliffe was not part of a ring. I think that he was. In fact, one of the guys who was his guard at Broadmoor is on my Facebook page, and he said that Sutcliffe just revels in his stardom and his superstar status, and he absolutely loves it. And that would be, for a stupid psychopath like him, that would have been a dream come true, just to be the fall guy for everyone, go into Broadmoor and spend the rest of his life eating takeaway and sweets, which is what he does. You know, he had the odd time he was stabbed. That one time he was stabbed in the eye with a pen by a couple of guys. But apart from that, he's had a very easy life as a superstar in Broadmoor. And so they will find one fall guy for it all. I often think that Dennis Nielsen, he was a serial killer who was in the SWP and the Anti-Nazi League in Muswell Hill. He was working in the benefits office, and he was basically looking, because he had this natural sort of cultural Marxist need to control people and to destroy them if he felt that it should be done, as what he felt like he had the right to kill people humanely, to use the George Bernard Shaw Fabian thing, that you could, we should kill people who are useless in society, but do it humanely. Now, Nielsen, who was a member of the Socialist Workers' Party and the Anti-Nazi League, he would spend his time, in typical SWP style, calling everyone else a racist or a misogynist, and then in the evening pick up people that he knew from the benefits office who were going through a hard time, get them back to his apartment, and get them drunk, and then strangle them and have sex with their dead bodies, chop them up and flush them down the toilet. And again, his rationale for this was that he believed that he was the kindly killer, and his belief in what he had done was the most humane. And this directly came from the Fabian sort of socialist thing which he was raised in, that these people have no lives, they've nothing going for them, so if we kill them, we're saving society, we're saving the socialist machine, and I can have sex with their dead bodies while in the meantime. And Nielsen, I don't believe, could have worked alone either. In fact, I believe a lot of them, I don't believe your man in the Soane murders could have worked alone, and not just Maxine Carr. To kill a human being, whenever I've read the profiles of it, human beings, when they have that need to survive, if you read like military profiles, will unleash almost supernatural levels of strength because pure adrenaline is trying to keep them alive. And there's no way a man Huntley could have killed those two girls on his own. Somebody else was involved in that. And that was another psyop as well, because if you look at the map where Soane took place, it's in Cambridgeshire, and Cambridgeshire itself is just like a weird place in general. It's almost like the Laurel Canyon of the UK. All the research labs and all the political labs and all the kind of weird serial killers and stuff come out of it. But it's also surrounded by military bases, United States Air Force bases. So you have that aspect to it as well. So things can be done off UK soil on these like Air Force bases, these American Air Force bases. And you have all these kind of things going on. And I don't believe that Nielsen worked alone. I believe that he had... It was just too tidy and too neat, especially with his military background, his military family background, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I drove. I lived in Cambridge, as you know, and I drove through Soane many times, and it's a very small place, and I don't believe that anybody didn't see these two girls in their Man United tops or Liverpool tops, whatever they were, coming and going. I just, it's a typical kind of village setting, on the outskirts anyway. It's kind of a one-street little town. And yeah, I mean, it struck me at the time. I don't see how he was supposed to have murdered them in the bath. Apparently,
yeah.
I mean, how did you get two girls in the bath to start with?
Yeah, I know, and the instinct to live would have been incredible.
Yeah,
there's no way a puny little guy like him could have done it
on his own. And they weren't small girls either. They were
teenagers.
Yeah, I'm sure they could have. At least one of them would have got away.
Well, at the time after it happened, there was a guy down there who was claiming that the killings had actually taken place on U.S. Air Force bases, and he had made some videos on YouTube or been on some radio stations, and he was going to speak at a town meeting in Soham about to get to the bottom of this. And just before he stepped on stage, he said that he felt this incredible heat on the side of his head, and he dropped dead.
Well, as you mentioned, there are many military bases around there. You don't have to drive very far to see them. They're in every direction, basically, around Cambridgeshire. And well, I mean, why have all those military bases in one place. That's what strikes me. And it's the same up in Norfolk, of course, as well. There's quite a number up there, and particularly the American ones, but which is close enough to Cambridgeshire anyway. But yeah, I mean, I could never understand how a guy could murder two girls in a bath who were, as you say, they were teenagers. I kind of thought, well, one of them would have escaped at least, you know. And yeah, I mean, as you say, somebody else must have been there, or they were murdered elsewhere. You know, I mean, you can imagine. Anybody can imagine trying to have a fight with somebody in the bathroom. I mean, you know, you'd be falling over the toilet, the sinks, and you know,
and two girls.
Yeah, yeah. It just wouldn't happen. Any other serial killers which have come across as quite unusual? Would you say, in terms of their profile as such, that you wouldn't suspect them, as you like? I know we have the I'll call it a theory that the original Ripper was a member of the royal family, for example.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And this whole new psyop that came out recently, that it was a Polish butcher, and the guy had the DNA on the rag. You cannot take DNA on a rag that's over 100 years old. You know, especially if he was a butcher, there's going to be DNA from everything on that. And that was just another thing. Oh, I absolutely believe that it was Prince Eddie who was the Yorkshire Ripper. London Jack the Ripper. And again, that became a massive psyop at the time as well. And what's also interesting is how the highest levels of society get involved. Queen Victoria was involved. Prince Edward, her son, who later became the regent, was involved because he knew the area well because he loved prostitutes. Prince Edward was he loved going to brothels and prostitutes. That was one of the reasons he visited Dublin so much, is because of what he said, the quality of the whores and the brothels there. This was his lifestyle. And so he would have been familiar with those areas as well. And so the thing stinks of royalty. The whole thing stinks of a deliberate smashing of the investigation, just like in Yorkshire, and then the scapegoating or blaming of a marginal group. In Yorkshire, well, I'm surprised they didn't try and pin it on the actual Asians in Bradford or somewhere like that. But there's probably already enough of that going on. But it was working class men who got the brunt of it. Now remember that Sutcliffe wasn't. You know, a truck driver in the 70s was a very good paying job. So Sutcliffe wasn't like poor or anything like that. If you look at some of the photographs in Yallop's books, Deliverance from Leaving, such as his wedding photograph, there's Masonic handshakes all over the place. So there's also the possibility that Sutcliffe was a Freemason. And also there's the infamous photograph of Sutcliffe shaking hands with the boxer Frank Bruno, and Savile is behind him with his arms folded with a look of satisfaction on his face. And again, it looks like a classic Masonic handshake.
Yeah, I was going to ask you earlier about Frank Bruno. I mean, what would you think possessed him to go into Broadmoor and shake that guy's hand and have it photographed? I mean, if you want to resurrect your career, I doubt that's the way you do it. So, I mean, what was that about?
Yeah, I'm looking at this photograph of Sutcliffe and his best man, Ronnie Wilson. If you want to look that up online, Sutcliffe and his best man, and it's a clear Masonic handshake, as clear as anything. It's two Lodge brothers. Now, regarding Bruno, well, that's an interesting one. When Frank Bruno was on This Is Your Life, all they kept talking about was his work with kids, and you had all these like cretins and creeps all showing up saying Frank's work with kids, blah blah, all the usual kind of thing. One of the more sinister appearances on it is Phil Collins from Genesis, who's talking about how much he admires Frank and what he can do to kids. He's saying weird things like this, and when the show is over, when Collins is giving his video kind of testimony, he says, "Have a great time after the show. Know what I mean, Frank?" And he winks. So there's some dodgy stuff going on there.
Well, I mean, we know that anybody who's got that kind of high profile in the music business or the acting business or whatever has been made by the industry, and it's not because they create great music or they're great actors. It's because there's something else going on, and obviously a lot of money to be made, but that's possibly a side issue. But they're used in the psyops as well, the famous actors and the famous musicians. they'll come out talking about global warming or whatever, and you're supposed to believe them.
Yeah.
These guys wouldn't do anything bad because hey, they're on the telly every night. It's like the newscaster. He wouldn't lie to you. He's on at 6 o'clock every night in your living room while you're having your dinner. He's been there for 25 years. Why
Yeah.
why would he lie to you? And I think it's the same thing with the celebrity, the cult of celebrity. I think we're all supposed to believe these people just because it's a sign in society of success if you're wealthy.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. And if you're on the television, you've made it.
yeah, yeah, and I think there was something else came up this week about some so-called celebrity. Um, the word celebrity itself. I mean, what is there to celebrate? Why are we supposed to be celebrating their success, or are they celebrating their own, or celebrating having some kind of hold over the public? I mean,
Yeah, I never understood that either. So we're celebrating, we're celebrating the fact that they're rich and we never will be.
yeah, yeah, and we've not even any hope of being, But I mean, I'll mention Tom Cruise. I mean, my colleague who's in the police for 31 years and did special protection, he's got some stories about him, which I'm no doubt will come out in time. And his wife, Nicole Kidman, what they were up to when they were over here filming Eyes Wide Shut.
Really?
You know? Yeah.
That's interesting because Nicole Kidman was mentioned by Dr. Robert Hare in the book Without Conscience.
Yeah.
As she had wanted to know what a psychopath was. And he had told her, basically, because she was playing in a role in that film, To Die For, which is actually an excellent film.
Yeah. I mean, I can say allegedly. When basically what was happening, they were part of the protection team for Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman when they were over filming Eyes Wide Shut. They'd been to Kubrick's house, which he said was extremely strange, where Eyes Wide Shut was filmed. Everything was locked up. You couldn't go into all these rooms and all the rest of it. You only had access to the kind of lobby and the library or something. And basically, allegedly, Cruise was staying in one house with getting rent boys delivered, and Kidman was in another with her lesbian lover.
Jesus.
Allegedly. I'll say.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Oh no, this is true.
Yeah. But I believe it to be so, as the saying goes. Yeah, so that's Tom Cruise, and you look at the types of movies he's been in. Minority Report and all those kind of dystopian kind of things. But this can't be true because it's Tom Cruise. He's a good guy. He's a good guy in all these movies,
Yeah. I mean, there's something about Tom Cruise. There's a superficiality or a lack of personality depth there that has always kind of never set right with me. It's very easy to say because he's a Scientologist and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
He's a member of a cult and he's brainwashed, but it's not just that. There's an artificiality about his personality depth or something there. And the fact that wife, that performance he did on Oprah before he married that girl, and he was jumping up and down on the sofa. He was trying so hard to show that he was joyous, but it was like bad acting.
Yeah.
There's a lack of personality structure there that I can't fully explain, but it's obvious to anyone that like Tom Cruise he's almost like a human cardboard cutout.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a superficiality about him. It's just it's one-dimensional, if you like. There's no depth to him. There is no personality there. It's just a flat piece of paper, as you say, a cardboard cutout. But anyway, that's Tom Cruise and stuff. Going back to the original Jack Ripper and the Royal Connection. Do you think he worked alone? Or were there others in the royal family involved?
Who knows? I mean, bodies are always turning up on the grounds of palaces and things like that.
Well, we had one recently, 6 or 8 months ago. There was one turned up at the Queen's estate up in Norfolk there.
Yeah, they always show up. Every so often a dead body is found, within, a polo ball whack of a palace or something like that. There's always, and they're you know, so it's like, who knows, you know, but who knows if those women even died in the East End, if they were taken out to like Windsor or somewhere like that, or dealt with there and then thrown back. You know, you will never know the truth of that, because if you read the Yorkshire Ripper case and any of the books about it, and there's a lot of good ones about it, they're uniquely, and it's, you know, even though it's good stuff, they're uniquely obsessed with the sociological aspects of it, how London behaved, how the East End behaved, and then who caused it, and there's always kind of a sociological profile. But every single top-selling book on the Jack the Ripper case immediately seems to dismiss the notion that it was Prince Eddie, which it always sets off my alarms. Is when they're very quick to tell you who it isn't.
Yeah, and get that out of the way right at the start, and then start leading you off into the direction they want you to go. It's kind of funny. I never you get these books, call them classics, whatever, or even some of the like the more factual books, some of the ones on psychopathy and stuff like that. I never read the introduction to these books because it's somebody else's opinion on what the book should be, and
Yeah.
I never ever read any introduction by or some somebody who's not the author has written their opinion on it, and I think, well, why are they trying to steer you in that direction before you've even read chapter 1?
Yeah, even in my own book, I always try to get someone else to write the introduction, or I'll write an introduction that has a sideline story relating to it, but I don't like introductions yourself in general, as it's almost like they're giving you the verdict before the actual evidence is presented.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, and that's why I skip over them. I sometimes go back and read them at the end,
Yeah, me
to
too.
see if I had the right impression of what I thought of the book or whatever.
But
Um,
that editorial slant, that's where the editor came in. The editor read the book, came in, and then does the damage control in the introduction.
yeah, yeah, and telling you not where not to look.
Yeah,
Yeah,
precisely. It's a
yeah,
big publishing. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. In terms of, I mean, we've not had a serial killer for a while in the UK, not that we know of anyway. Um, do you think they're ongoing and just not reported, or do you think they've done a bit of study using the Sutcliffe as an example, and West, and the guy in Soham, although you wouldn't necessarily class him as a serial killer because there's two victims supposedly at the same time, whatever, and it wasn't pushed that way, was it? It was pushed in a slightly kind of different direction. This could be the guy next door. He was a respectable guy working in a school, could be anybody. Just like we're being taught the terrorist next door kind of scenario now. It's the lone wolf gunman could be out there somewhere, Red's under the bed, that kind of thing. Do you think we're due for one, a serial killer, if you like?
No, I think they're always with us. They always exist. They're just not sexy. I know that's a terrible expression, but that's what copy editors in the media, in newspapers call it. They're not sexy at the moment, and they're not. There's no interest. Terrorists are the new sexy. That's what the sexy is now in terms of copy editors at newspapers. Sexy is terrorists. They're just not. They're just out of fashion. But they do exist. Yeah, they're still out there and they're still killing. An example of this would be Larry Murphy. Larry Murphy is an Irish serial killer who killed about 6 women in Ireland in the 1990s. He was from a town called Baltinglass in County Wicklow, and he killed about 6 women. He was caught raping a woman and about to kill her at one point, and he got caught by 2 hunters who pointed the guns at him and got him to stop up in the Wicklow Mountains outside Dublin. And they never had enough evidence to charge him for the other killings. He's now living in Holland with another serial killer. Yes, and it still goes on. It goes on. It's just not sexy anymore, to use their term.
Yeah.
And they've no interest in it. Their interest is in terrorists.
Okay. Okay. Here's a scenario, if you like. Okay, we've got the so-called lone wolf terrorist who goes on a serial killing campaign. Bumping off people in the military or something to get people on the side of more war. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a scenario that's possible?
Very possible. Another one that's possible is all these scientists who've been murdered or found suicided under suspicious circumstances. A report came out that back in 1982, the Thatcher government, the Home Office, said in the event of a nuclear war, that the Home Office would recruit psychopaths. I don't know if you saw this. Would recruit psychopaths to actually run Britain in the post-apocalyptic landscape, and then he said the idea was dropped. But I don't believe it was dropped. I believe it. They were doing. The British Home Office had insights and understandings of psychopaths that took me, nearly 30 years later to bring out. And they had them 30 years ago. And do you think they would have never let these people out of their sight or out of their grip? And I believe that maybe these are the ones they're using to murder scientists. Now, there's a vast amount of scientists in the UK, mainly working in bioweapons technology or germ warfare, who've all been found dead. Suicide, and that's this kind of thing. They call them suicide. I think that the intelligence services, such as MI5, would find a psychopathic serial killer and give him a job bumping off these scientists. So yeah, nothing is outside the bounds of a possibility with these people.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny you should say that certain groups employing psychopaths to carry out murders. I've been watching the Borgias, just as a matter of interest, and in that, the Pope has a psychopath who he sends out to murder people he doesn't like.
Yep.
So it's not beyond the realms of possibility for sure. And when they say they want to employ psychopaths to run Britain in the wake of a nuclear war, I mean, why wait for a nuclear war? I mean, surely the ones that are in charge now are kind of pretty much there in terms of psychopathy and having no empathy for people. But it's just not such an overt fashion. It's done in different ways. It's done in financial ways, or taking benefits off of people and starving them to death, or the livable care pathway in hospitals where people are just starved to death. That kind of thing.
Well, we think because you look at a film from the early 80s like Gorky Park about how they assassinated people in the Soviet Union, and we think, because we live in a democracy, our intelligence services don't assassinate people. We don't do those kinds of things. That's what the Serbian Secret Service does, or the Soviets. They do those things, but our people, they don't. And like, even in the head of MI6, even say something like, "We've never assassinated someone in 50 years," and some journalists burst out laughing when they said it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how we're conditioned.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Like mentioned Stasi, these so-called intelligence services in other parts of the world all have these kind of sinister kind of names, but we've got MI5 and CIA. We don't have a name because we're not nasty.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, there's no doubt, and I'm sure you'll agree that there are a number of psychopaths in government and the opposition, just waiting their turn, kind of thing. As you say, most psychopaths aren't serial killers or even murderers. They're control freaks, to a large extent, and I think anybody who applies to be in a position of power should be rejected immediately, or certainly have some kind of testing mechanism to say, well, why do you want to do this? What's your goals? And as soon as they step out of line, get rid of them, get them out of there, because they're certainly not of any benefit to society. And the evidence is clear. I mean, we've seen it I've seen it all my life. When I was old enough to realise what politics was all about, I've seen nothing get better. I've seen these people, these so-called leaders, the best that money can buy, kind of thing. We're told another psyop. We're told that if we don't pay them enough, they'll go off and work in the private sector. Well, good luck to them.
That's the senior civil service.
Yeah. I mean, these guys couldn't run a sweet shop. The ones that we see on the televisions,
Yeah, the senior civil service is really more likely to be psychopaths than elected politicians.
Yeah, because they never change.
Yeah, they don't need to run for office, and they're the ones who are like they just want to hold out for the big pension and have the power. That's probably, in fact, even in Kevin Dutton's survey, senior civil servant ranked among the highest of the highest profile of psychopaths was civil servants, for the simple reason that it's an unsackable job. An incompetent moron can do it, and all you have to do is be ruthless and be a yes man. No matter who's in power, be a yes man, and that's a perfect job for a psychopath. Is a civil servant.
Yeah, and I've read in your own books and others that most of these guys are morons, and they're just totally incompetent. But they have the nuance, if you like, to bluff their way through it and just stay where they are. Doesn't matter what kind of chaos they cause.
They have shrewdness. They have shrewdness, but they don't have creativity. And you see that in them. They're the ultimate yes men and yes women. And they play the game, and they brown nose, and they're ruthless, and they'll destroy any. But when they cluster at the top of a company such as Enron, that's a classic example. They are at the top of the .com. The .com bubble was an example of psychopaths in business, pouring vast amounts of money into this .com industry, which basically went nowhere. And that's an example of what happens when they cluster at the top and they have like a feeding frenzy. They destroy anything. They're like what was it your man in the Sopranos said? I'm King Midas in reverse. Everything I touch turns to shit.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, as I say, I've read in your book and others that that's generally what happens with these people. They go from one position to another, and they tend to continually go up the way. But everything behind them is total chaos, and we see that in government departments, I suppose, where I can't remember her name now, but she ran the revenue service or something, and then she was moved to immigration, and she'd been moved on someone else, and she just left chaos behind her. And yet she gets a big fat salary and a nice big pension and promotion.
Kissinger, you voted for him.
Well, exactly.
Madison,
Well, Nick Clegg.
Yeah,
you voted for him.
they're in every government, and their incompetence is not punished in any way.
No. Well, I mean, even the ones that are supposedly voted for, I mean, they're totally incompetent, and it's there for everybody to see if they just opened their eyes and looked at it. But unfortunately, just keep voting for them. I'll go to another tune, and then we'll come back for the last 20 minutes or so. Okay, missed my cue there. Sorry about that, folks. We're chatting away there off air with Thomas. Right, Thomas, you were telling me just a minute ago about your new project, newssymbolmedia.tv. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, this is something I've wanted to do for a while. My opinion is now, I may be wrong, is that this is all over. The conspiracy thing is done, it's finished, it's run its course. It started really to flourish about late 2008, early 2009. It went through its various metamorphoses, its various aspects, and it's kind of come back to the point now where there's really nothing new in it. To me, I always have believed that this alternative movement is the emerging mythos. It is the sort of the allegory of our times, and we're a kind of a folk tradition who are almost like storytellers who are mocking the king, mocking the queen, as we would be in ancient times. Satirists, bards, that kind of thing. I've always felt that's ultimately what this movement was. We were never going to be a political power. There was never going to be a great awakening. That was never going to happen. But what was always going to happen was that we would be kind of like lighthouses, or the voices in the wilderness who basically called out and sang the songs and told the stories of the sort of the revolution that never happened on the surface, but it definitely happened in consciousness. And so an idea I've had for a time is to create a kind of a new kind of delivery of information, but in a kind of an artistic spoken word kind of way. So I came up with this idea, like I was doing it on my radio show, The Velocity of Now, which was very successful for me, and it got me. People still loved it, but I am bringing that show back, where I mixed my comedy routines, my stand-up stuff, and it basically, the alternative, whatever you want to call it, conspiracy stuff, the stuff in the psychopaths all together. This time I want to try a kind of a more artistic approach in terms of the modern Gothic kind of idea. I want to do spoken word things that will kind of speak of the narrative of these times. I'm very interested in Anglo-Saxon and Viking poetry and sagas, and I see how their mythology and their understanding of their power structures and their own lives in those days were spoken through the Icelandic sagas and through the poetry of the Anglo-Saxons. In that way, these sagas would be delivered, and I've often found that we could do it something like this. In fact, I could do it. I would enjoy it very much to deliver this. So the idea was to come up with a theme that would also capture my own interest in things like Gothic literature, horror stories, the supernatural, the mysterious, and couple it all with the mysteries of the mind. And the title I came up with it was The Murder of Sleep. That actually comes from a Shakespeare quote. It's based on a Shakespeare quote, but the idea was that you could look at the murder of sleep in two ways. One, it keeps you awake all night thinking about it. That's one aspect of the murder of sleep. And the other idea of the murder of sleep would be that it's killing your slumber, in consciousness slumber. It's waking you the hell up. And so I felt like I'd taken this every other kind of way I want. And so this idea of a series of programs through newsymbolsmedia.tv of delivering these kinds of mysterious ideas, mysterious shows in the context of seeing not only our individual life story as a kind of a monomyth, as a supernatural adventure in these times, but also the story of the world around us, because I think if you can see it in these kind of supernatural terms, in these kind of non-material forms, it's much easier to deal with it, and also makes them far more interesting. And I've always been very interested in early cinema, like early German cinema, in the Teutonic myths and the Celtic myths and the Anglo-Saxon myths, and the idea was to cultivate that and bring it into the modern sense. So the first one I'm going to do, which will be in a couple of weeks, will be called Pazuzu, the Father of Lies. And I will talk about the idea of possession. Possession not just in a kind of a supernatural or religious sense, but possession in terms of how society can be possessed by political and social ideas. And Pazuzu, the Babylonian demon, which appears at the beginning and at the end of the Exorcist movement, will be kind of come the anchor to tell this narrative and tell this story around. I'm going to put specific specifics, detail into how the words are spoken and how they're said and how they're delivered. That someone could just like sit there and these stories, these mythologies would become the new Anglo-Saxon poetry, the new Vedas, the new Icelandic sagas, the new Celtic stories, to tell us of this, the last 7, 8, 9 years of what we call the conspiracy world, and to carry it on to the next level in order to inspire artists and musicians and poets and playwrights. And that was the idea behind this. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really looking forward to it.
That sounds very interesting, and of course you're still involved with that. Well, you're involved with I can't remember the name of it now. That's terrible. The event up in Manchester, where
the Creative Rebellion.
Yeah.
You were there, and Paula was there. Yeah, that was the same idea. It's like I don't, we'll never have the power to take them on. We don't have the weapons. We don't have the military. We don't have the police. We don't have the votes. We don't have the civil service. But what we do have is our creativity. We have our art, our poetry, our jokes, our music, our satire, our allegories, our mythologies, and we can kind of like slice a narrative through all their crap and deliver our own story going forward, almost kind of like bards. And the Gnostics, I always think the Gnostics is a phenomenal example. The Gnostics were the ones who survived the Roman Empire to deliver the true story of the Christian myth and the idea of their ideas, and it was forgotten for centuries, but it emerged again simply because that mythology was kept alive. And it transcended everything. It beat everything in the end, to the point where, for centuries, the Gnostics were hardly known. And now everyone talks about them, and everyone is fascinated by their ideas because they delivered the story of their existence and their experiences within the early Roman Empire through a kind of a supernatural, mythological, artistic narrative.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about your we've all got creativity in some form or another, and or artistic ability, or whatever, musical ability, whatever it may be. And I always wonder the famous speech in Braveheart. They can take our lives, but they can never take away our freedom. Well, of course they can take away your freedom. They can lock you up. So I mean, I always thought that was a nonsense. But one thing they can't take away is your creativity and your ability to create poetry, for example, or to write a book, or to make a movie, or whatever. They can't take that away from you. They can take the equipment off you, but they can't take the ideas off you. And they're saying that there's nothing like, I can't remember it, paraphrasing. There's nothing like an idea whose day has come, kind of thing. They can't take ideas off you.
No,
They can't take that from you.
The human being is such a magnificent creature that you could be thrown in a cell with 4 blank walls and not be given anything else for the rest of your life, and they can begin to look at the indentations and the roughness of the plaster on the cell wall and begin to see landscapes, and from those landscapes in your minds develop kingdoms, develop cities, develop ideas, narrative stories. The human being is a tremendous spirit in being able to do this. You can sit there in the darkness and close your eyes if they put you in a darkened cell, and eventually the prison of cinema will come on and the phosphines will start firing the neurological foam constants in your brain, and you'll start to see shapes, and you'll develop imagination, and you'll go off to live in a world of immaterial phantoms that only exist within your neural pathways and in your imagination. And that's what makes the human being so incredible. They cannot take that away from us. They can probably nullify it with SSRIs. That's why we have to make sure they never get the chip inside us. And so that's all. That will always be a big one for me. They do not let them get their software into our brains, or their powerful medications into our brains. Once they're not doing that, it's all to play for. And it's like in the Shawshank Redemption, where someone said to him, "I don't need to hear classical music or operas. They're all stored right up here in my brain, and I can recall them at any time." And we've lost a lot of that because of this high sensory thing of the kind of environments we live in, or TV, or the mass media, or having mobile devices constantly. But it's like Franz Kafka. I think he said, all you have to do is sit alone in a quiet room, and the universe will unfold before you. And Kafka was right about that. Our imagination cannot be taken from us once they don't get the chip or the powerful medications inside us. And that's the thing. They can lock you up in any prison. Once they don't do that to you, that was always the story of the one flew over the cuckoo's desk. The idea was the Indian was quiet, and he never said anything, but my God, he had a hole. He had it all sussed out in his own head. And he recognized Max Murphy, the character played by Jack Nicholson, when he came in, that this was a kindred spirit. That although he was more doing this overtly on the sort of outside, on the conscious level, the chief had it all within inside him at a subconscious level. And they were the two guys that were never going to be broken by Nurse Ratched.
Yeah. I suppose back in my youth, as it were, you're always busy, you're running about, you've no time to think. Yeah, there is literally no time to think, because as you say, there's all this sensory stuff going on around you. Whether it could be TV, it could be just work, or whatever it is that's occupying it at the time. But I never really started to kind of think in any kind of deep way at all until I went to live in Turkey, and I barely spoke any of the language, so there was nobody to talk to. So when you've nobody to communicate with, you've got plenty of time to think. you know. And I
Right.
started doing that. I never watched TV because I couldn't understand what it was about. I didn't want to just look at the pictures, you know. It was that, and I started meeting people and trying to do a bit of language. But predominantly, you learned how to be patient and just sit and think. And then I found the same thing in Eastern Europe when I lived out there, and I didn't speak the language there for a while. I mean, I'm fine now. I can get by, but I still have plenty of time on my own when I'm out there. And you do get time to think, and you just sit down and, as you say, you've got all this stuff in your mind, but the whole your whole environment around you has kind of kept it quiet.
Yeah. Well, the same when I went to New York first. I was very shy and very, even though I spoke English, I didn't know anybody, no family or friends there, and so I was isolated an awful lot. And so the same thing happened. Like, I mean, that's why I would spend, hours just wandering the streets at late at night or riding the subway at all hours. It was almost to enter into another dreamscape in your mind, just like what happened to you in Turkey. That's why I'm a big proponent of emigration. I think the people I meet who are usually the most uninteresting are ones who've never actually emigrated and put themselves on the line to try doing something in another country or reinvent themselves. They're usually the ones who actually they end up becoming Nazis and things like that. But like it's like Mark Twain said, the greatest cure for ignorance is travel. There's
Yeah,
a lot of truth to that. It is. It's true. And like a lot of these morons I see in this alternative movement who are all like up in this neo-Nazi fetish now. They're all like zeros who've never been outside Coventry or some dump like that. And and that's instead of actually challenging themselves in their own lives and doing something, they blame the outsiders for coming in. And I see an awful lot of that kind of thing.
yeah. Well, when I had my cafe in Boyle, I started off employing local people. Because I thought that's good. Give a couple of people jobs in the local community, and I was an outsider. But I learned very quickly these people hadn't been anywhere, and they had a very kind of blinkered view of what was what. And most of the people that would come in during the summer would be tourists, and
Yeah.
they'd never dealt with tourists. They never met a foreigner anywhere, and they just couldn't deal with it. So
Yeah, Boyle
I
Boyle is a
just
very strange town that way.
yeah yeah.
It's almost like it's got a dome built over it, and there's Boyle inside and nothing outside.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's two halves to the town. One side had money and one side didn't, and they kind of had this kind of factional kind of parochial infighting going on for 100 years or something. I don't know, but no, I mean, I ended up employing people who travelled, like you say,
Yeah.
who had a bit more open-minded about things and had a better idea about how to deal with people. But
Well, the cafe that you had, I still go to that. It's a bunch of Polish girls run it.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, they took over from well, one of my staff who was there, who had worked abroad and stuff. She took it over, and I said, "Don't do it," but she wanted to do it anyway. And then the Polish ones took it over. So there you go. But I was never back in it after I left it, so I wasn't that bothered.
It's a
Um,
nice place.
yeah, they probably still got my furniture. Anyway, that's ancient history now. Um, just getting back to what you were saying earlier about the truth movement. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think it's done and dusted. I don't think there's any way to turn this around really. The best we can do is delay it. What's coming down, and the best thing we can do for ourselves is to be ourselves and
Yep.
just to ignore it and just step outside
Yeah,
and say,
and live your life like it doesn't be a distance inside your own head, yeah, and your own life, yeah.
yeah, and
So the future's grim. The future's completely grim. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I've tried to say to people in the chat box over the past month or so, the only way you're ever going to get anybody else involved in this is to get on local mainstream radio and just phone them up about anything. Because
Yep.
they'll have you on. They'll have you on. It's easy. I did it loads of times in Ireland, and I've done it in the UK. They're talking about cats stuck up trees. I mean, somebody comes on talking about fluoride in the water or whatever. They'll have you on, and that's the
Yep.
only way you're going to get anybody to wake up because we're all talking amongst ourselves,
Yep.
you know, and
Yeah,
going
no,
nowhere.
it's over. It's finished. It's done. It's dusted. All that's left now is for us to grow and flourish as individuals.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
I mean, hopefully somewhere down the line, I don't know, it might take 100 years, it might take 200 years, 300 years, and there might be a resurgence of humanity. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to do anything about it in the next 20, 30 years.
All I see are people with Apple iPods implanted in their brains, drones in the sky,
Yeah,
and Agenda 21. That's all I see. I don't see anything else except the pros. I was thinking today about Winston Smith in 1984.
I'll sit in the cafe.
Yeah, before that, like when he went in the Pearl District with Julia and they made love in that grubby room. That's what it was all about. And it was only when they started to see themselves as revolutionaries taking on the system that they robbed themselves of that. So the hope and the wonder is moments of stolen beauty, whether they're romantic, whether they're creative, whether they're enjoying them with children and family and friends. That's it. That's the cherish. They're the diamonds. That's the eye on the prize. So this idea there's going to be a great awakening, that's gone. I mean, all you have to do is look at Common Core in the United States, where they're
Yeah,
already developing a race of children who can't even relate to their own parents, let alone to anyone like us.
yeah. I went to the supermarket a couple of weeks ago here, and I had there was one of these recycled, made in China, green bags for Publix, a store called Publix here, and I went into Winn-Dixie's with it, which was obviously the wrong store to go in with that bag. And the, the young girl packed the shop and she says, "Thank you for thinking about the planet," and I just thought,
So
what did you?
superficial.
Yeah, I thought, what? What did you say? She says, "Thanks for looking after the planet." I said, "I'm feeding myself. I ain't looking after anybody." And she just kind of looked at me as if I was fucking mad. There you go.
Fake reality.
Yeah, yeah. Because I had a green bag made in a sweatshop in China. She thought I was saving the planet.
Yep. And that's what it's like. You love Russell Brand, you're going to get rid of all the crazies in government.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
same.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, Thomas, that 2 hours is come and gone. We're at the last minute. So just give us the website for your new project.
Well, my regular website is thomassheridanarts.com. My YouTube channel is Thomas Sheridan Arts, and my new website for the new media project is called newsymbolsmedia.tv, and that will be starting in the next few weeks. And I can guarantee people will be quite surprised by it, and I'm looking forward to it. And I've got a few other books in the works, and I'm very excited about the future creativity wise. And we are winning, but we'll win as individuals in small groups and as small communities. But that's good enough.
Yeah. Okay. Just stay on the air. I'll chat to you when I've handed over the stream to somebody else. Just bear with it. Cheers.